here so I wouldn't bump into the Advent wreath like I knew I would. So, well, it's great to see all of you as we begin our Advent Bible study series. And for those of you who regularly attend the adult Sunday school class, thank you for your flexibility in giving me the opportunity to lead this study. Now, I have to say that the idea for it did not come from me. This was a request that Sandy Rupp had made during our Ecclesiastes Bible study. And I said, well, we'll see what we can do. And as I said in the service, Advent is not really just a season of the days leading up to Christmas. And culturally and in many churches, it is. How many of you have an Advent calendar at home? Yeah, so chances are there's probably a chocolate in it, in the doors that you open every... Do what? Do what, Anita? There's 3 days left until Christmas, yeah. You know, I have never had an Advent calendar, but I have seen the ones that have the chocolates in it. And even at Aldi, I've seen wine Advent calendars, bourbon Advent calendars, and coffee Advent calendars that have the K-cups in it. So it's a different coffee every day. And I was like, actually, that sounds pretty appealing. All of those sound pretty good. But so if you listen closely, however, to the lectionary readings that we hear during the season of Advent, none of them have anything to do with the coming of Christ at Christmas, at least for the first several weeks of it. So today, we heard a reading from the prophet Jeremiah that wove into our Advent wreath lighting. And then we also, in the gospel reading, heard a passage towards the end of the book of Luke that Jesus is saying, you know, this is what will happen, or this is what the end will look like. So it's really talking about the coming of Christ at his second advent, his second coming, as well as the first coming. So, as we get started today, I am curious, and I've got my handy-dandy board here. I'm curious to know about your experiences studying the end times. So when you think about the end times, what comes to your mind? No right or wrong answer, just popcorn them out. Panic. Okay? Anything else?
The fulfillment of Jesus' mission.
Fulfillment of Jesus' mission, okay? Okay, anything else? Tribulation. Anything else? Whoa, all at once.
Not to be funny, but my age.
Your age. Can you say more about that, Mary?
Tribulation, end of my time.
Oh, okay. So our own mortality. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, kind of the end of our little world as we know it. Yeah, or rapidly changing. Yeah. What I also heard Antichrist. Yeah, Antichrist. Anything else?
A great battle.
Oh, the great battle, Armageddon. Yeah. Okay, anything else?
Am I prepared spiritually? Have I prepared myself?
Yeah, readiness. Mm-hmm. Anything else come to mind? What's the question again? When you think of the end times, what comes to your mind? Answers. We'll finally have answers to a lot of unknowns. Heaven.
Reconnecting with loved ones.
Ah, reunion. Yeah. Judgment. Anything else? There's no right or wrong answer. Vision? Ah. Mark of the beast. Okay, funny story time. Okay, so what do we often associate with the mark of the beast? 666. When I was in college, I took a New Testament and the End Times course. You had better believe that it was a brand new class that the professor was introducing. It hit registration and filled up within minutes. People who weren't Bible and theology majors signed up to take this class. And he tried to get this done at the college level. It didn't work. But he told the story of a professor at Asbury Seminary, where I went to seminary, named Bob Mulholland. He taught at Asbury for years before I got there. But he taught an end times course at the seminary level. And in the course catalog, you know how courses get labeled like ENG 100, English 100, Math 100? Okay. In the course catalog at Asbury Seminary, that course was NT, New Testament, NT 666. And it was full every time he offered it. Yeah. So I did not name this Bible study New Testament 666. But I will tell the story. But yeah, the mark of the beast, 666. And there's almost kind of like this panic around that number. Like I know people, like if they're buying something and it totals $6.66, they have to like throw in a candy bar. So that, yeah. Do you do that? Yeah. It's almost like superstition around it, right? Anything else come to mind? Revelation. I'm going to switch markers because those fumes are... Whew. Okay, Revelation. Yeah. Anything else? Annual? Daniel. Oh, yeah. So since we're talking about Revelation, another apocalyptic book, Daniel. Next to panic, I'm also just going to put dash fear.
That's what I was going to say, because I fear first.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Okay, so let's switch gears. Just another curiosity, just to get our conversation started. So if you have studied the end times before, I am curious, obviously besides the Bible, that's a given, right? Where have you gotten most of your information about the end times? I'm curious, what books have you read? What television programs have you seen? What websites have you checked out? What YouTube videos have you watched? Where do you get your learnedness from or on the end times? Where do you turn?
My first introduction, even before I read the Bible, was the Left Behind series when I was a
Left
kid.
Behind. I was waiting for that one to get mentioned. think I might have to deal with fumes. This is... Left Behind. What else? People.
Like my aunts were some of the first people who talked about it. God had me so terrified. I don't like to think about Revelations now.
Yeah. Literally put the fear of God in you. Yeah. Yeah. So anything else? The Bible? Yeah.
The History Channel.
History Channel.
Like, I was watching that before I was a Christian. I'm like, these people are nuts.
Yeah. Well, and then the Left Behind, there was the books, and then there were the movies. So there's both of those. Anybody else? Evelyn.
When I was a kid, I would wake up at like 3 a.m. and like those like televangelists on like the like TVN and the 700 Club and they would be like scaring you,
Uh-huh.
telling you like you're gonna, and like yelling at you, and I'm like, what did I do? And I was like 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but if you give a donation.
Yeah. So speaking of that panic and fear, there is one word. Okay, now I'm just curious. And so thinking about some generational things here. This is a little bit before the Left Behind series. But did anybody ever have a copy or read the book, The Late Great Planet Earth? You remember that? Yeah, by Hal Lindsey. In fact, Hal Lindsey just recently died in the past couple of weeks. But then there was also a song back in the 70s that I think it was called "I Wish We'd All Been Ready." I wish we'd all been ready. The Father spoke, the demons dined, the Son has come, and you've been left behind. Yeah. That sort of thing. There's actually another word that I'm surprised no one has said when you think about the end times or maybe with sources that you have consulted. And there's a word that I'm kind of surprised nobody has mentioned it. It starts with an R. The rapture. Yeah. Whenever I think of the end times, that's the first thing I think of. And how many of you grew up or have experience with the idea of the rapture? Anyone? Yeah. How many of you can point to a time in your life when you thought, for one reason or another, that the rapture had happened and you've been left behind? I've got one. I have. Absolutely. Yeah, when I was like in a store and I couldn't find my parents or my brother, I seriously thought that the rapture had come and I'd been left behind. Yeah. Yeah, I actually put that on Facebook. I just wanted to see, like, is this just me or do others have this experience? You would not believe the stories that were told around this. Yeah. Okay. Well, any other sources, books, movies, TV shows?
I didn't finish it, but it was a show on HBO called The Leftovers, and it kind of, I thought that's the way it was going because a lot of people just disappeared and they didn't know what happened, like their clothes and everything. So I think it was kind of like going in that vein of it.
Yeah. I'd never heard of that. Yeah.
Daystar channel, they've got different preachers on there, First Left Behind, like Terry Stone.
Yep. TBN is another one. Church, Sunday school, absolutely. I'll even write Gene's name down. You made it on the board, Gene. This is what happens when you turn 90. Okay.
I do have a funny rapture story. I have a really good friend at Connection Point,
Uh-huh.
and she's the one who gets up early and gets to Connection Point and sets up all the coffee and stuff before anybody else gets there. One morning, she thought she had overslept, and she rushed around from our neighborhood. She got to the parking lot, and it,
Oh, she thought she got a little behind.
she thought the rapture had come, and she didn't let behind. She thought it was Sunday. It was Saturday.
Oh. I actually have woken up on Saturdays before and thought that I'm like, oh my gosh, it's time for church and I've overslept. And then I realized, oh wait, it's Saturday. All right, Vernice. You, in every Bible study I've done, Vernice has always been the one to put these up on the wall.
Yeah, I thought I had my markers in the car, but.
Well, I've got some in my office too, and I'll use those next week. So, how many of you knew that there is a word for the study of the end times? Does anybody know that word? Do you know it? So the word for the study of the end times is eschatology. Eschatology. And it comes, okay, don't fall off the stairs. Okay, eschatology. It comes from the Greek word eschatos, which simply means last. And actually, in English, we have the word eschaton. And maybe you've heard eschaton before. So, eschatology is the study of the end times, or the last things. And what we need to know is that eschatology is a component of theology. It is within the broader field of theology. It is not a separate branch of theology that someone can specialize in, so to speak. So there are no official professional eschatologists out there. They're not hired by seminaries. They don't have their own shows on cable network religious TV. So why in theology should we study eschatology? Why do you think studying eschatology is important? Any thoughts? Curiosity. Well, definitely curiosity. Yeah. If we're going to talk about the beginning, we need to talk about the ending. Yeah. Yeah, preparation. Anything else? Well, there are several reasons, and these are all wonderful answers. But there are several reasons also that I thought of. Eschatology, like the rest of theology, deals with the nature of God and God's work in the world, and especially in the lives of God's people. Studying eschatology gives us a greater vision of a God whose hope and whose love has been revealed to us in the risen and victorious Christ. And it also gives us a vision of how that love and that hope will triumph over all manifestations of sin, evil, and death. You know, when we are confronted with the evil, the sin, the death, the wickedness that we see day in and day out in the world, we need to have that hope in front of us. And then also studying eschatology opens up to us parts of Scripture that many people find difficult to understand and to interpret. We call these parts of Scripture apocalypse or apocalyptic literature. In fact, I won't say who it was, but I had a member of the church come up to me, and we were talking about this upcoming Bible study, and he said, "Keith, I've got the perfect solution on how to handle Revelation. Don't read it. Avoid it." I said, well, that is one way to deal with it, and I think many people do that, but it's part of our sacred text. It's part of our salvation story. And so, yes, it's difficult to read, it's difficult to comprehend and understand and interpret, but that doesn't mean we get to avoid it. Because our world certainly isn't avoiding it. And it's on us to read it and understand it, to interpret it responsibly and reasonably, and to witness to its hope today. So the book of Revelation, and Walt, I think, did you mention the book of Daniel? Yeah, so the book of Daniel and Revelation are the two primary apocalypses in the Bible. And we'll talk about apocalypse and what they mean and what entails an apocalypse. But before we do, there's a couple of warnings that I want to give you. With any invitation to study theology, there are certain warnings about some pitfalls that we can fall into when it comes to studying eschatology. First and foremost, no part of eschatology should be used to incite fear or panic. I thought it was totally revealing, I use that word intentionally, that when I ask what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of the end times, panic was the first word that was mentioned. Fear was the first thing that was mentioned. And that's because many times the end times theologies and the beliefs that we hear get presented to us in a way that seeks to motivate people to give their hearts to Jesus so they don't get left behind, so they don't get thrown into hell. And it generates this fear and this panic in their hearts, like, oh my gosh, I've got to do something so I don't get left behind. You know, I think about churches that do like judgment houses at Halloween. Do you know what I'm talking about? So this is the version of the haunted house, and the church gets totally redone, and people walk through it, and they encounter all of these horrible scenarios. And then at the very end, there is a depiction of the rapture, and people are carried away, disappearing, and the people who are left behind are depicted being thrown into hell. And then there's a presentation at the end was, if you don't want this to happen to you, you need to get saved today, because this is probably going to happen tomorrow. So, judgment houses at Halloween, movies, TV shows, a particular series of novels promote a style of evangelism that is really fear-mongering. And fear-mongering joins with guilt complexes, shaming tactics, and other manipulative practices that are really nothing short of spiritual abuse. And they should be rejected by responsible Christians everywhere. And so in this study, we're not going to fearmonger. This is not designed to make you afraid. This is designed to give a lot of hope. So take heart. Also, throughout history, beyond Christianity and within Christianity, humanity has always been fascinated with how the world is going to end. And wouldn't you know, because of this fascination and the curiosity that we can possess, a certain set of Protestant Christians have been responsible over the past 50 years for the proliferation of eschatology in media. And what has resulted is the end times have become big business. A lot of money has been made on this. And what I'm afraid is that prophets have become more important than responsible biblical study and theological reflection. And so, if you come across so here's your Advent discipline. If you come across this stuff in the media, turn it off. Just turn it off. And consider how a responsible faith might approach these problematic, not so problematic, but difficult parts of the Bible. We can leave the fanaticism behind for a few weeks. So, what do we do instead? We turn to the Bible. And so we turn to the biblical sources that we have for eschatology. We've already mentioned them. Daniel and Revelation are the only two complete apocalypses in Scripture. So when you hear the word apocalypse, what do you think it means? Disruption, destruction, the end. What else? Future. Finality. Yeah, and I think all of those descriptors fit in with modern vocabulary. Because we often use the word apocalypse to describe massive disasters or cataclysmic events. And we even say that they are of apocalyptic proportions, right? However, the word apocalypse is basically the Latinized version of the Greek word apokalypsis, which gets translated as revelation. But actually, the word apocalypse means unveiling, an unveiling. Which is pretty ironic, isn't it? Because when we read books like Daniel and Revelation, we don't see much unveiling, do we? We see fantastical visions, coded messages, symbols galore. It seems like it's more veiled to our understanding than unveiled. And so we're left to read these books as kind of like we need to decipher the hidden message. We need to figure out the code. And we need to solve the mystery. And when we do, then we'll know exactly how the world is going to end. But that's not the purpose of Revelation at all. Apocalypse and biblical apocalypses basically pull back a curtain and unveil or reveal a deep truth about the world. They were a popular type of literature in the ancient Jewish and early Christian worlds. And so we've already identified two. And certainly there are parts of other biblical prophetic books like Isaiah and Ezekiel that contain visions that we might describe as apocalyptic literature as well. But Daniel and Revelation are the two full ones that we have. But outside of the Bible, or at least outside of our canon of Scripture, there are many more. including great Jewish works like First Enoch, which predates the book of Daniel, actually. In the in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, First Enoch is actually regarded as scripture. It is in their Bible. Also, the letter of Jude, the last epistle right before the book of Revelation, actually cites First Enoch as scripture. So if you want to turn there, we can take a quick look at it. It's Jude verses 14 and 15. Jude 14 and 15. So verse 14, it was also about these that